All right, so let's boogie. So what is the Footsies Handbook? This might be your first Street Fighter game, so let's talk about it a little bit, okay? I know it might be a little weird, a little scary. Like, do these people have athlete's foot? I don't want it to be stinky. I heard about those Smash players. No, that's not that. Relax. Calm down, Poppy. Yeah, chill. Just chill, okay? Listen, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna look at it. We're gonna click on some videos. We're gonna have some examples from old Street Fighter games, and you're gonna see how, regardless of the time period, right? Regardless of the game, that these things will stand the test of time. These things are principles, and principles are transferable from generation to generation, right? They are principles of success, right? You see, like, all the successful people, they typically have things in common, regardless of the period of time that they existed in, right? So it's the same thing with fighting games. The engine of the game might dictate, you know, the way the painting looks, right? But you still know that there's a frame, that there's paint involved, right? They're all like staples. Okay, so regardless of what picture is being painted, you know that you have essentials to paint a picture, essentially, right? So let's begin. Let's start it off with this, okay? So I'll go through this, read this, whatnot. So the Footsies Handbook. Footsies is old school slang for the mid-range, ground-based aspect of fighting game strategy. The ultimate goal is to control the flow of the match, bait the opponent into committing errors, and punish everything, okay? So this is from the perspective of the author of this article. He says, when I first found the tournament scene back in CVS days, I remember it took me a very long time to understand what players like Valle and Choi were doing on the ground to control the match. At first sight, it seems like a bunch of spontaneous normal moves and pokes, but there's a clear purpose behind each of them. Okay, so if you guys don't know who Valle is, Alex Valle and John Choi are two legendary fighting game players. Not just in, you know, Street Fighter, but they played multiple titles as well. You know, Valle actually, I think, got top 8 at a Tekken Evo, I believe, or something crazy like that. So these guys are just fighting game specialists, okay? If you watch their matches, you see they have a lot of intention behind the things that they do, even if there is no action on the screen, even if there's no music coming from them, if there's silence, there's no activity. A lot of it's still intentional, okay? So a lot of the things that look like random, sporadic behavior, you might be able to realize, like, oh shit, this is actually tied to some sort of like philosophy, right? But the thing is, it's kind of like a game of telephone where you see people doing it now, but a lot of people just do it because they see other people do it, but they never really explored it. So they're just like, oh well, I see this guy do it and it works, and it makes them whiff, right? But they might not have done enough digging to really understand how these things work, because you might do it against somebody and you might get hit and get frustrated and be like, this doesn't work, or this is dumb, or I can't do it, right? So this is important. Continuing off, nobody really talks about footsies in concrete terms because it's seen as a complex and elusive subject. However, these articles will help change that perception, because anyone who wants to compete at tournament level absolutely needs to know this stuff. You don't have to use it, but you have to be aware it exists, okay? Very important. Imagine you are lost in the middle of some foreign terrain. You don't speak the language, right? And all these things are happening around you. You don't even know if you are being threatened, if somebody's trying to help you. You don't understand because you don't speak the language, right? Everything kind of looks the same. Everything is just unfamiliarity. So learning the Footsies guide basically introduces you to a language of fighting games that you might not be aware of, okay? And like learning languages, once you've learned these things, you become aware of them. You can see them. You can see how they actually are tangible now, right? It's not just like something that exists beyond your comprehension. Each installment covers 3 or 4 specific tactics which you can integrate into your game plan to achieve practical results. Think of it like one of those chess books showing common situations and how to solve each one. If you absorb enough of these pieces, suddenly you'll have a solid game plan. So chapter numero uno. Let's read this little subtext here. Footsies 101 begins with 3 universal concepts, axiomatic to all Street Fighter games and the fighting game genre in general. Punishing whiffed attacks, intentionally making yourself appear vulnerable, and using poke patterns to set up throws are all fundamental skills. Let us dig in. All right, so let's begin with chapter 1, okay? So a lot of people make the mistake of assuming that footsies is something you whip up on the fly. While you certainly can do it that way, and while freestyling footsies is certainly a valuable skill, the fact of the matter is that Alex Valle knows more about footsies than you'll ever know. The real problem is that you don't even know that you're supposed to know these things. Footsies as a whole is such a dynamic, complex subject that it's impossible to convey or grasp at once. So we're going to try something different. Let's approach Footsies like a collection of situations and try to come up with elemental solutions to each scenario. Practice these one by one until you're comfortable enough with them to incorporate them fluidly into your game plan. Okay, so you don't try to rush this. All right, so element number 1. Momentarily step into your opponent's poke range and quickly back out instead of attacking. This is Footsies 101. To see it in action, check out Mike Watson's Hyper Fighting Guile demolishing some poor bastard. 2 consecutive full rounds of toying with his opponent's natural reactions. This bait works well in tense matches, after extended periods of cautious zoning, or with charge characters who rarely walk forward. Okay? Think about tense matches. Let's frame this. When things are very tense, right? It's very easy for, people to tunnel vision. It's very easy for people to literally stop breathing, for the muscles to become tense, for execution to get thrown off, right? For them to be susceptible to things that otherwise didn't really work when things were nice and calm, right? It's easy to do everything whenever, everything's going sunshine and rainbows according to how you want it to go, right? If everything goes according to plan, it's very easy to do all that shit. But it's when the X factors kick in, the stuff you don't account for, the things that are outside of your awareness all of a sudden come to fruition and pimp slap you across the stage into a bad situation. Now you're in the corner near a burnout, right? That's when the pressure is on. Okay, that's when the real fight begins. So obviously we're jockeying for position and advantage, but it's once the human element starts to kick in, that's when fighting games really open up. Okay, if we were just robots fighting each other, this shit would be boring. Just reacting to like 3-frame pokes, right? Like it just immediately wouldn't be fun. It's the human element that makes these things fun, right? It's the errors, the possibility of errors, the possibility of overcoming things, right? That imperfection is what makes this beautiful. Okay, so toying with your opponent's reactions is a matter of understanding, well, what are they looking for? What are their desires? How do you know somebody's desires if you don't take the time to understand your opponent, right? So a lot of times when you watch people playing fighting games, especially these new fighting games, it's very easy to fall into this habit where you are what I like to call like a break dancer. Shout out to Kaizen Master for teaching me this, but like you're basically like a b-boy and you just dance by yourself. You don't really give a shit, right? Break dancers, they just they'll top rock and it's one at a time, right? They go down, they do their 6-step, whatever, they come back up, their opponent goes, right? One at a time. That's what happens a lot with fighting games, where it's like people just kind of want to force and impose their play and their opponent can't really get a chance to express themselves, right? But at high level, both players are too good for that to not happen. Okay, so that's where things get interesting, right? So that requires a little bit more diligence and work for you to gain those skills, instead of just like autopiloting and just going 0-2 in every bracket and wondering, why can I not open this guy up, or why is he steamrolling me? That's exactly why. Okay, so being able to toy with your opponent's reactions requires you to actually understand them. So think of it like a conversation. So if you go on a date, right, you would like to listen to the partner across from you, so that way you can make decisions about whether or not you want to be with this person, right? Or what are the things you guys need to work on or whatever. But those things will fall on deaf ears if you do not listen, right? So it's very important to listen. So it's the same thing with fighting games. If you're not listening, then things are going to happen. Things are going to be spoken on the screen that you are ignoring, right? These are red flags. You see, it's like dating. When you have red flags and you purposely ignore them because your desire is so strong that you want it to be a specific way and you just want to deny all other possible outcomes, right? So fighting games, very similar. It's this conversation. When you watch your replays, did you take the time to listen to your opponent, or are you just blabbing your fucking mouth the whole time? It's a very important question to ask if you want to get better. When you watch your replays, I highly recommend you do this. If you were to remove the names, remove the biases, and you just pretend you're watching somebody for the first time, you don't even know who that is, what would you say about the way they're playing? Does it seem like this person is paying attention, or are they just gambling in every interaction? So as far as the the matches being intense and stuff like that, walking in and out of the range of an opponent's like really good pokes is so strong when there's an extended period of people, the two players just kind of like trying to feel each other out, because maybe they both have access to super, right? So super can influence players to be very cautious because they don't want to get hit low, right? So if you're playing Ken, prime example, low forward into drive rush, right? And then he hits you, he confirms it, he gets corner carry with target combo, run, enhanced Tatsu. Now you're in the corner. That situation all stems from the crouching medium kick, right? But the thing is usually when people want to move forward, they naturally are transitioning into aggression, right? So it's that transition that becomes a blind spot, and they ignore the sell that you're selling your opponent the information that you are about to become aggressive. So that's why sometimes it's good to just move forward and not do anything and then just move back, because your opponent might think, oh, you're about to commit to something, and that thing never happens. It's like a ghost, right? You guys know on like Mario Kart how your fastest lap is a replay of it's like a ghost image of you doing the exact same routes and stuff like that, right? The same corners, the same like strafing or whatever. Like it is exact, right? It's a replica of your fastest lap. That's what people will see in their head. They'll see, oh, every time he moves forward, he usually presses a button. So when you step into an opponent's range, and you know, maybe it's not your ghost, it's their ghost of success, they think, oh, well, every time he steps in this range, I hit him with crouching medium kick. I'm a crouching medium kick. And then there's that one time you just randomly back up, right? And now they're vulnerable. So it's really good to do that. And then also with charge characters don't really walk forward, right? So when you talk about intention, movement, right? Movement is a reflection of your intention. Somebody that was naturally just sitting back with Gal all of a sudden moves forward. Or don't you think they're gonna try to hit you? It's natural to think that, because you're like, wait, what? If you're not thinking that, at the very least, you are excited they're moving forward, because you're like, oh, here's my chance, right? So then you're like, here's my chance to hit them. And then you go to poke, and then he whiff punishes you, and you're like, bruh. Right? So let's look at an example of this. Okay, so Mike Watson's playing Gal. Okay. So just watch. See that? Let's run it back. So you see, this is technically an extended period of zoning, right? Look, it's very passive, you know, he neutral jumps, does the boom, walks up behind it, right? You would think, oh, he's gonna try to pressure, right? And what does he do? He inserts passivity inside of aggression, which is very weird, right? He's like, damn, but he what like, you're Guile, you should be over there, why are you coming in my face? And then you see he baits him. He's just basically toying with him, right? Look, see? And it's funny because the same situation happens where you neutral jumps the fireball, and you see he's baiting him, so he's already aware of the adjustment immediately. He's like, all right, I know that, especially that I just read you like a book there, something's gonna change. He doesn't know what exactly, but that's the point of the feint. The feint is, I need to see what changed. See, that's why he does the jab, and he's ready with the flash kick. Okay, but now watch. He sets it up again. See, so he's just toying with him now. The boom, the walk up, the nothing. See, and then again, after he counters him, he tries to become aggressive again. The same situation. Let's run it back. Baits it, okay, right? Neutral jumps, waits, punishes the counter. Okay, look, baits it again. Okay, punishes the counter. But see, and he just see, that's such a clean, easy round, right? But do you see? Does that make sense, chat? How just simply selling an idea to your opponent can open up opportunities. You don't have to be forceful. You got to think of it like a businessman. Nobody wants to buy from a salesman that something that they think it wasn't their decision, right? I would never want to buy something if I felt like it was forced upon me. I want to buy something as if it was from my own decision making. You know what I'm saying? That's the same thing that's happening here, is that he's giving him this idea like, oh, I'm going to do this, and he bites, he buys it, and he reveals what his intentions were all along. Okay, but the player is not really paying attention. This guy's probably fixated on winning. It's in the arcades, you know. I imagine that's probably what's going on. He's like, I need to kill this guy, I need to get him, right? He's too worried about his quarters getting lost, and that's what happens. So yeah, so I could show you guys examples of this, right? So let's go into some examples of what these would look like. All right, so let's check it out. What would this look like in Street Fighter 6? Well, At its bare bones, the skeleton, it's literally this. Walk in, walk out. So you want to identify what the range is of the thing that you're looking for, right? That is all dependent on the character. Okay, because not every character has the same range or uses the same types of tools, obviously, right? So we have to be mindful of that. We got to be mindful of that. So we'd want to figure out, well, what is the range between these two characters that I would have to be positioned at to make his best buttons with? Okay, well, let's look at his best buttons. Okay, so let's take Luke. Some of Luke's best buttons. Let's see. Okay, stand medium punch is pretty good. Stand heavy punch is pretty good. Okay. Stand fierce. Okay. Low forward is pretty good. He moves pretty far forward. Okay. Yeah, so he has a lot of good buttons, right? It's pretty good. So what we want to do is we want to find our furthest poke typically, and I think that would be stand medium kick. I'm pretty sure we can lab this. Let me see. Okay, so that whiffs here. Now, does sweep hit me here? This is a good question. Let's record another one. Okay, so we know sweep is his longest poke so far out of the ones that we just labbed. Okay, so I go back to the same spacing. Let's try another button. Stand fierce. Nope, that whiffs. Okay. Roundhouse whiffs. Low forward whiffs. So basically, if I space myself outside of range of sweep, I will avoid everything. Okay. So I've now deduced this and simplified the neutral to this. I don't have to play any further than max distance sweep range to avoid his pokes. Okay. Changes up when we talk about fireballs, but we're ignoring that for now. Okay. So we're just talking about legit his buttons. Okay. So if I know I am here, I will avoid all of his buttons. But what if I get hit? That tells me a couple of things, that he moved forward or I moved forward. Okay. So there's something that is the spacing is not static anymore. It is dynamic. There's some influence occurring that is manipulating the range. Okay. Is it my part or is it on his behalf? That's important, because then now you know there is an opportunity that you could potentially take advantage of. All right. So if he's like walking forward, for example, that means he's not blocking. If he's walking backwards, that means he's not blocking his toes, right? Okay. So I say, all right, we're here. So now I avoid all of his buttons. So whenever I want to incorporate element number one, it's as simple as I know the range of where he is going to whiff, right? So we will then draw this and say it's like right around here, right? It doesn't have to be exact. As long as you are outside of here, I avoid it. Okay, I walk up. Obviously, this is not going to change with the stage, but okay. But if I'm like here, I would basically avoid. His best pokes. Okay, so as long as I'm here, nothing reaches me as far as his buttons. So what you want to do is you want to practice movement into that range. It's as simple as this: walk up, walk back, walk up, walk back. Okay, some people you only have to walk up a little bit. You only have to do this. Ugh. Others you have to be a little bit more convincing because they're so aware of their spacing. So you have to walk up a little deeper and then walk back like that. Okay, some people you just do this. Others maybe do this. The people that are hyper delaying, you could just walk up and press. Okay, but for the sake of this element, this is how you would go about this. You have a shallow and you have a deep version of it. Basically, this is like my extension onto this through the years. So you have a shallow version, which is like, you know, just selling the movement. They're not really aware of the spacing. They just see the movement, and I just kind of hover and I bait it. But if it's a player that's a little bit sharper, I might have to sell it. I have to be a little bit more convincing, right? I have to give them a story that's a little bit more enticing and be a little bit closer. Okay, something like that. All right, so element number 2. So determine which of your combos and attack strings position your opponents barely outside their effective reversal range, especially when facing characters with greater mobility. One of the best ways to trick someone into wasting meter and handing you the match is by making yourself appear falsely vulnerable. There's no better example of this concept than the famous final exchange of the B3 Street Fighter Alpha 2 tournament, which is between Choi and Valle. Okay, let's check this out. Okay, so let's check this out. I remember this like it was yesterday. Okay, let's watch what he does. That was very fast. Okay, but ideally what you want to pay attention to is pay attention to how he set up this string at the end. Okay, see, and he positions himself at this range where he can't immediately get the contact, and he punishes the commitment. Bang. Pretty good. Okay, so what does this look like in Street Fighter 6? Well, it's a couple of things. Okay, number one, this. Okay, but not just any contact, right? A contact with something that entices somebody to want to do drive impact. You understand? Think of it as two parts. It is the spacing, but it is also the tool that creates the spacing that is going to increase the likelihood of somebody wanting to bite. Okay, so I could create this range, right? Of, let's say I want to create this range. I could create this range by doing this. See, it's the same range, but it's not likely to entice them to do drive impact. But you know what would make them do drive impact? That. Why? Because think about what drive impact punishes, right? So you can use the things that this tool beats as a way of enticing your opponent to invest into that resource. It's especially easy to do it when it comes to like meter moves, right? Because usually when people have meter, they want to dump it right away because they're just so strong, right? Now, you do this, and you of course want to do it with mastery. You want to do it with a lot of intention in terms of the spacing. Like, I don't want to do this here because he could just literally punish my fireball, right? I want to do it at a range where I'm going to be safe if he blocks it, and then, you know, it's out of range of the stuff we just talked about. Isn't that ironic? You see how this kind of builds into one another? So these elements can kind of stack, where if I get rid of this, I do this, but now look, I'm out of range of all of his pokes. You see? And now what is he going to want to do? Well, he's going to probably want to invest his meter to close the gap, especially if he's losing, right? So I've basically accomplished two things here. I'm outside of the range of his pokes, and I'm enticing him with something that would make him want to drive impact. Okay, boom. Now this isn't the only thing they can do. Now this is a common situation that's happening in this game where players are responding with drive rush at the end of like Footsies scenarios, right? Like pushback, and they do this. Okay, so this is a way of beating that, is literally element number two, where you don't want to push them away to where you are at a disadvantage and your pokes are like, you know, not fast enough to deal with it because of that. So you want to be very like expertise with it, right? So maybe you're doing like a slow fireball there, right? And then you can react. Okay, okay, so this is a way of doing something like that. And then now look, all because of one simple little counter, you got the corner carry. Now these type of situations will likely induce hesitation when you punish somebody enough, if they're smart, and then now they'll start to kind of shrivel up. They'll be a little bit more calm, and that's when you can start walking up and throwing people. Or you can do your own drive rush, see? Or you can do, you know, you do a raw drive rush, or you can do a drive rush poke cancel, right? But it all stems from that, just from understanding the scenarios revolving around blocks done at Footsies ranges. Okay, so you have the drive impact, and you also have the drive rush scenario. Okay, so those are like the two biggest culprits of how people end up losing advantages in this game, is literally those two things: it's drive impact and drive rush, because people aren't really managing it properly. Okay, let's finish this up. Let's wrap this up. Okay, so element number three: once you've established a pattern of poking consistently at a certain range, use your opponent's hesitation to walk up and throw them. It's always dangerous to wander into enemy attack space, so wait until you're certain you've trained them to think twice about pushing buttons. John Choi's CVS2 Sakura does an excellent job of demonstrating this principle for the entire first round of that Evo 2K7 match. There's no way he would have gotten away with such gutsy throw attempts at the beginning of the round. Okay, so let's check this out. So notice what you're gonna see here is how he's conditioned him with stand heavy kick. Just watch. So you see he mixes it up with jabs just to see if things have changed, because he did introduce the possibility of a jump so early. Watch, right? Like he jumped right here and he got lucky to get jumped in. So you see he kind of throws jabs just to see, okay, all right, so he's being more grounded. Okay, this is fine. Okay, now watch, he's doing the jabs just to make sure, right? He wants to convince him. Okay, now look, all right, okay, and you see he gets the walk up throw. How does this work? Well, because he has him fixated on trying to stop this stand heavy kick. You could tell because look, he's trying to whiff punish it. You see, he's trying to whiff punish it right here, see, and he missed. All right, so it's an evolution of what just happened over the course of the first like 20 something seconds, where he jumped, he sees he's jumping, Sakura sees that Fiori's jumping, and then Sakura starts doing feints just to like test the waters. You got to think of it like testing the waters. He sees, okay, he's now starting to get more grounded. Okay, you always look for the signs of somebody being more grounded, whether it's for 2 seconds or 3 seconds, and that's where you strike. Okay, so he gets him, he gets the sign that he's looking for, and it's him trying to whiff punish him. And then the next time he jumps, we saw he just walks up and throws him. Okay, so what does that look like in Street Fighter 6? A couple things. If you have a really strong poke like Ken, it's his stand heavy kick, right? Looks very similar in nature to Sakura's, which is pretty funny, right? Really good reach, very safe, right? Just a overall great poke for controlling space. When you get your opponent to fixate on this, they're gonna do one of two things. They're gonna be passive about it, or aggressive. They're gonna be active about it, right? They're gonna turn on the switch. How do they turn on the switch? Everybody's different. Some people, they do this. Okay, some people do that, and that goes back to what we just talked about, right? With element number 2. See how this builds on it? So some people, they do that. Other people, they might do this. See, once you've conditioned somebody to try to stop this, guess what this opens up, right? So think of drive rush as just a better dash in this game, right? Like you can dash, but like you just get so much more off of this, like, you know, it's like you might as well just go for this. Okay, because in theory, the drive rush is less telegraphed than a regular dash, but it is actually numerically faster depending on the option that you press out of it. So the fastest possible drive rush would be with perfect dash, right? It's 3 frames to start up for the parry, and then on frame was it frame 8 you can cancel, right? So I just did a 4-frame button, so on the 12th frame I'm able to attack basically. Okay, so it is 3 plus that 11, right? So that's 14, and then on the 15th frame I'll be able to hit. So that's still faster than his 19-frame dash. See, so that's if you do this. Okay, it is a little bit more telegraphed because of the green and the screen freezes for a certain amount of frames. So like it is, if you are looking for it, it is easier to react to, which is why I like drive rush, because it is obviously a superior dash, but you can actually do something about it if you're ready for it. Okay, so I do think there are going to be adjustments, of course, to it, but I like the game a lot, so I don't really have many complaints, to be honest. So yeah, so that's like a way that you would basically incorporate something like that, right? You can do that. You can also sneak in jumps because people might get so fixated on beating this that they're not ready to anti-air, right? Or another thing you can do is you can do like Sakura did, where she just walked up and threw, right? So you don't have to always commit to something very obvious. You can just like walk up and throw. Okay, this is how I was walking up on Street Fighter V, even though he had extremely slow. It's because I know that their focus was so densely on the thing that it didn't matter if I was walking. I was able to just buy security and just throw. So now all of these applicable to any fighting game. That's considered fundamentals. So, and there's obviously like little troll elements and stuff like that. Okay, so that concludes our Mastery Monday Footsies fetish number 1. All right, for chapter number 1, for the 3 elements that we just discussed today. Okay, which was walking in and out of range of your opponent's pokes. All right, positioning yourself in spacings where you appear vulnerable and punishing their attempts to close the gap, and conditioning somebody to fixate on a tool so intensely that it opens them up to walk up throw or any sort of horizontal movement into pressure. Okay, so with that being said, if you enjoyed the dialogue, the conversation today, of course, like the video, comment on the video below, let me know how you felt about it. What was your favorite parts? Did this open up your third eye, your Kundalini Street Fighter magic? Can you now see into the cosmos and read the Yomi layers of Daigo Umehara himself? You let me know. I appreciate everybody that spends their time on my content, on my streams. I love every single one of you, regardless of if we have spoken or not. And with that being said, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace and much love to you.